What's up, everybody? My name is Corey. I'm your host here on Smores Indoors on YouTube, and this is the first episode of 4x4 Wrestling here on the channel. Jonathan, you got your title belt. You're ready to go.
Yeah, and you found like the markiest picture of me that you could possibly find. And you put it on there.
That's your wrestling-related picture, okay?
I'm jealous I can't take the belt from you. I think they'd question that 205 limit on me.
I'm way past what light heavyweight would be considered. I'm firmly in the heavyweight category.
You had to retire that belt, apparently.
That's why I have it, you see. So
just have friends go over and but back in my prime.
Exactly.
So along with myself and Jonathan, we also have Dan here from Flesh Wound Features. Dan, tell the people a little bit about your channel if they're new to you.
So Flesh Wound Features is a little bit of everything. We're a horror movie themed channel, but we also do true crime, cult films. We've got Flesh Wound Farce. We do literally everything. We're just a bunch of weirdos that kind of have no lives, and we just watch a lot of stuff. Wrestling as well. So
awesome.
Just general weirdness, I guess.
So since this is the first episode, I do want to mention that this will be a show probably once a month where we talk different topics in wrestling. And of course, it'll be myself, Jonathan, and Dan every time. But it's 4x4. What's the deal with that? Well, the thing is, we'll have a fourth guest every time. That'll be a different person each time. So that'll be kind of a unique take on this show. So our first guest for this first episode is a pretty awesome one, though, I gotta say. Big fan of this guy. If you're a fan of wrestling, you know this guy. He's interviewed a who's who among wrestling legends and current performers even. And shoot business several years ago. And it is our honor to welcome Mr. Sean Oliver to the show. Sean.
You see, the game has been upped because I come on and someone's got a belt. I see someone's got a championship belt, Mr. Bombastic, who's apparently in the bathroom at this moment. Yes. So that I had to, our friends at Wildcat Belts made the Wrestling Media World Championship belt for Kayfabe Commentaries.
Nice.
And all of our shows are on the side part there. I don't know if you can see the logos for You Shoot and Timeline. And this was one of the coolest gifts that we ever got from anybody in the business. And I keep this safely hidden in the basement. I will not be wearing this to conventions. Though plenty of people do wear belts to conventions, but it just doesn't look right. Now, Daniel, I always take over the show, so I'm going to apologize in advance. I end up interviewing the people that have
that works.
Now, Daniel, you've got a horror movie podcast. I heard in the intro. Is this a fact?
Yes, I do. Yes.
So you're a fan of that genre, no doubt. You know, I was often on a show. I think I was on more than any wrestler on the show in your head wrestling with Jackie Jones, and he also has a Without Your Head, which is a horror podcast. I don't know if you've ever caught that.
I am aware of him. Yes.
Okay, and I always end up going on his wrestling podcast and just talking about like Basket Case and Maniac, and all the films which shaped me as a young man. I was a very big horror film fan. And I write horror novels now, as you know, Daniel, you've no doubt read them all. So at any point, if you'd like to throw a reference to Joe Spinell out, I will be able to go with you with that. And we could debate Fulci versus Dario Argento. We could talk about which contained a little more outre, as they might say. Who was House by the Cemetery? That was Fulci, right? That was
Fulci, yes.
Fulci,
yes. Yeah. You seem to have a love of a lot of New York-based horror. Frank Henenlotter for Basket Case.
Basket Case, Joe Spinell, right.
Yeah, we worship Joe Spinell at Flesh Wound Features. So,
listen, he was a great actor. Gone far too soon, I think. But I digress. Please, this is your show. What the hell else would it be? It's Saturday night. Do you really expect? Listen, once COVID's over, guys, people are going to start dating again. All right. So I don't know.
Yes.
Who's going to watch this? I don't know who's watching it now, but please go ahead.
So that's a question I was actually going to ask you later when we talked about your books. But there's some weird correlation between people that like wrestling and horror.
Yes.
You have a theory on why that is?
Yeah, I had a podcast for 4 seconds. I hated it. And one of the episodes I talked about the undateable triad, I called it, because if you've ever seen Manhunter or read any of John Douglas's books or any of the FBI profiles, there's something called the homicidal triad. And it's 3 qualities in interviewing serial killers that were commonly seen together. And it was bedwetting, animal torture, and fire starting. And when those 3 things are together in a child, you got to keep your eye on them. So it was commonly seen. So I kind of applied that to the undateable triad. So in high school, if you had these 3 things, you were just pumping your hand and nobody else. Professional wrestling, Kiss, and horror movies. So that was it. And if you found a girl who was into that, you really shouldn't be around her. I mean, it would be nothing to look at.
No, that checks out.
The undateable. We look all around the same age, so I think it would apply for all of you that is absolutely the triad of undateableness in high school.
Yeah.
No, it checks out. It checks out.
Painful memories. Very painful memories.
I guess Big Crack Rock in the chat's okay. He only started fires, so
right. So like Ted Bundy owns your ass, man.
Yeah.
There's a fellow podcaster whose I forget sister or cousin actually went out on a date with Ted Bundy, which had to be interesting. We do a lot of true crime as well, so yeah.
Now that begs the question, and I don't mean to make light of murder, but you're Ted Bundy, okay? Like, why, if you're getting are we dating one and killing one? What is the delineating factor? Why he goes on a date with her and she lives, but a girl gets murdered?
Yeah.
That is interesting. I think she would have been eventually, unfortunately, because I think that side of him would come out. But I guess it's sort of wanting your comfortable home life and then letting the beast out at night.
Right. You hear so many of these guys like the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway, who was married for 30 years or whatever, and working, and then it's just like honey, I'm gonna get a beer, and he cut someone's head off. So that is that duality. The Iceman, Richard Kuklinski, who was a
family man,
a New York based. Well, actually, his house was a few blocks from me, and when he lived in West New York, New Jersey, and he was a quick funny story about him. So I'm watching so when he gets arrested and he's on HBO, he's on a series on HBO, the Iceman. They talk to him about his crimes. He was a contract killer, basically. But there was always this rumor. It was like, he lived in town for a while. He lived on 58th Street. And then I'm watching one of the HBO shows, and they show his kids coming down the steps in an old 8mm home movie reel. Mm-hmm. And I know where it is. It's across from a park. And I knew a kid that lived next door to him. Lou Manupelli, by the way. So I see Lou, and I go, Lou, did you know the Iceman? He goes, no, the Iceman. He goes, we were all at school. My dad was at work one day, and my dog died. The family dog died. And he was home next door, and my mother was freaking out and crying. He heard her crying. He knocked on the door. He goes, is everything okay? She said, the dog died. I don't know what to do. I can't leave him here. He goes, let me take care of it. So he laid out plastic. He took duct tape. He wrapped it up, and he buried it in the yard. They found his victims that way.
He had experience. Yeah.
So the Manupelli dog got to get the treatment, the famous treatment that so many victims got.
Wow, it's going to get morbid because I know probably true crime podcasters that would want to take a picture with the dog at that point.
I'm sure. Yeah, there is that line, right? can you say, yeah, I'm into serial killers? And people go, but it is a fascinating study. I read before, it became very in vogue to read about this stuff. And, there's that series. But when Mindhunter first came out, that book, I was fascinated by criminal profiling. I'd never heard of it, and most people hadn't. But in reading it, it made such perverse sense to me. And, the phrase that Douglas always used, I don't know if it's in the series, I didn't see it, but he said, if you want to learn about the artist, you look at the art.
Yeah.
And very much that process, being able to walk into a crime scene and very accurately, sometimes down to the color of the car that the perp would be driving, they would be able to put together a picture. It's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all that was fresh and kind of new. It wasn't very well respected in that time. But yeah, the series was actually pretty good. Unfortunately, it's just not coming back. But
Netflix does it.
Yeah, yeah, I know. That killed me too.
Well, I guess we promised some wrestling talk.
We did. Yes.
I know. We're really going to kill this and start talking about like Randy Savage, right?
Yeah.
I guess I'll get it out of the way first, though, because I've had 6 people ask me the Batista question, and that's got to be old. So I'm acknowledging that you asked it, but I'm not going to.
Listen, it was out of my hands. It was in You Shoot. We have a series, for anyone that doesn't know. We had a show called You Shoot, which our concept was, we came along at a time where the shoot interview was not, had not grown beyond the static shot of a wrestler's head with like a disembodied voice asking questions in an echoey room that you couldn't hear, and no production value, no anything but almost like an interrogation. We came and we wanted to add an element to it. We wanted to add the visual element. We wanted formatting. We wanted it written. We wanted it to look a certain way, sound a certain way, etc. So one of the series we thought would be great was, we said, what if we turned the entire interview of a star, it's got to be someone who's a lightning rod, somebody who's going to elicit a lot of fan attention. What if we turned the whole interview over to the fans? Entirely video and submitted questions. And it's kind of like, have at it. Here's the Honky Tonk Man, uncensored through the safety of video or emailed questions, anything you want to ask him. And as you know, that kind of took off and set a standard for some of the more salacious characters in wrestling to be interacting with fans on video. So in You Shoot, we got a question at one point from somebody on the board at the Figure 4 Weekly Wrestling Observer, and they asked, "How big is Batista's dick?" And it was just such a random, ridiculous question that we put it in, and it could have very, very easily just been omitted, either by Anthony, who compiles all the shooting scripts, or myself, who on the set, I'm editing as we're going and saying, this, we're not on this road right now. Skip that, skip that, skip that. Mm-hmm. But I asked it, and it then became a thing. And so everyone started asking. They tried to slip it in. They preamble a question with some very long, prologue about, Bruno Sammartino and, 1977. And how big is Batista? It then just became an exercise in how creatively can you ask the talent. And to a person, they all treated it seriously. They were like, Lanny Poffo, I thought he was going to get a chart. He was like, well, I know everyone wants to know that, and everyone's talking about it. And actually, no one really is, but he was incredible. He was one of my favorite guests ever. He was talking about, somebody asked him about the size of somebody's schlong, and he begins to answer the question, tell a story about it. I don't know if it was Alfred Hayes or Antonino Rocca or someone. He goes, I've never seen it, but from the stories I heard it must have been fantastic. And just the use of the word fantastic.
That is a perfect Lanny Poffo.
I would say animalistic, enormous, terrifying. It must have been fantastic. Odd choice of words.
It's amazing. It became like people. I've even asked me, like, because they know I'm into wrestling, and they'll be like, "Oh, how big is Batista's dick?" It became such a huge thing. No pun intended.
No pun
I'm glad they would ask
Batista's dick. Just the question.
I'm glad they would ask you, Dan, like you would know.
Yeah. Are you into it became like an internet.
So you must have seen Batista's dick before. So.
Could have happened.
But what a testament to Dave Batista's influence. The minute they find out Daniel is a wrestling fan, the first question isn't, how do those guys do that? Or like, is the blood real? They go, how big is Batista's dick, Daniel?
Well, last time we measured.
The schlong has become a totem of the business.
They just keep that little chart like when your kids grow, basically, and keep track of it throughout the years.
There are horizontal pencil marks on the lockers of many arenas, and now you know why.
Oh wow! So there you guys go. You got an
Batista's
answer.
dick question is out of the way now,
and still unanswered.
Exactly.
As far as I go. So
Iron Sheik answered it. I believe it was 11 inches. Iron Sheik, I remember, answered it in a shoot interview. So
he would have answered 11 inches if you asked him what he had for lunch that day.
Yeah. So one question that we had actually, and it's interesting because we reviewed his documentary, Vampiro, who got kind of angry because we had a weird response from him about how inaccurate our review was. What was he like? He has a very strange reputation, I know, of saying some very odd things in interviews.
I got along with him fine. I haven't had very many bad interactions in wrestling. There's a few, and they're all documented in my books. They deserve it. But for the most part, even people who are known to be difficult, I didn't have a problem with. But now Vamp was interesting because I kind of got a heads up from Russo at one point. I said, I think I was just talking to him, just bullshitting outside of the business. And I said, Vamp's coming on. He goes, oh, bro. He's gonna tell you some stuff that is ridiculous. So I kind of knew it was coming, so I welcomed it. When we got to the point about the Guatemalan spirits that were over his head, as I'm sitting with him trying to interview him, I pressed him. I want. He was able to have some fun. Listen, you walk a line sometimes, and when you do it on a podcast, it's one thing. But when they're 4 inches from you, it's another thing. But he's talking about the spirits. I said, listen, is there any chance that they're just rats that you did wrong down in Mexico, and they won't leave you alone? But he went on and on about it, and Russo and Disco shortly thereafter took that U-shoot and did an entire episode of their podcast voting true or false about each of his stories. If you can find that edition of Russo's podcast, I don't know which, he's got a bunch of podcasts. I don't know which one it was, but the one where him and Disco dissect Vampiro's U-shoot, it is gold. Absolute gold. And he sends me a picture. It's weeks after the shoot. And he says that the ghosts jumped in, the spirits jumped into his head because he was unprotected or whatever. But he's in a morgue. He's hanging out in a morgue for some reason, and they wheel in a body, and the bodies weren't supposed to be there, and that's when they jumped into him. So I have some fun with it. Listen, if you're going to come on my show and you're going to tell me there's Guatemalan spirits, sitting on my head, I'm going to make some jokes. Now I get a picture. I wonder if I can find it. He texts me a photo of a body in a morgue. He's like, right there, bro. That was it. So he had the wherewithal to take the photo of the body being wheeled in. I'm going to check. How does he spell his last name? Hodgkinson?
Yeah.
Hutchinson? Something like that.
Just hanging out in a morgue on a Friday,
Right. Well, it's basically the show. So. Well, Saturday, actually.
Saturday, yes.
Yeah, he was interesting.
Yeah, if I find it, I'll bring it up. But please continue.
I do love that edition.
So, I do want to suggest anybody that hasn't read Kayfabe, make sure you go out and get yourself a copy. It's an excellent read, and we definitely want to cover some stuff that you talked about in that. But I want to start out with, I know my entrance into wrestling and really getting hooked on it was kind of later, as I was a little older as a kid. It was the whole Hogan, Andre, Piper's Pit thing, that the build to WrestleMania 3 that got me hooked. What was it for you that kind of, appealed to you, and what kind of hooked you growing up?
Batista's thing. I was, I guess, like 5 or 6. I was at a friend's house. His older brothers had it on television. Now, I grew up in New Jersey, so I was a product of the Vince McMahon Sr. wrestling product. So I guess circa 77, 78, Superstar Billy Graham is on TV, and he's cutting a promo. So I think I had seen the violence in the ring first, and I was kind of like, whoa. And then Superstar takes the mic, and I just remember my reaction being so visceral. It was just, I just never seen anything like it. It was, to anyone who doesn't understand, people who watched back then when there was that veil of believability they were trying to keep in. The best way I can liken it is, superheroes are cool again now, right? Iron Man and Captain America, it's all cool again, okay? So take that mindset and just send it back to 70s, 80s, and that's what wrestling was for kids, okay? Now add to the fact that they are real. I mean, if you run into Afa or Sika outside Madison Square Garden, they're not taking anything off and being less frightening.
Right.
That's them. So King Kong Bundy walking by you in Target would be a moment for you.
Yeah.
So, we watch movies now of superheroes with the understanding that it's fake. People watch wrestling now with the understanding that they're going to see somebody on a reality show talking about their character, and that didn't happen back then. So. For a kid who might even be able to see some of the punches showing a little bit of light, it was very easy for them to suspend disbelief, because when you went to the Meadowlands or the Cow Palace or the Omni, and King Kong Bundy walked past you, King Kong Bundy fucking walked past you, and there were no special effects. So it was that wonderment. It was that after seeing it the first time on television, then going live, it was mind-boggling. My first live event was October 1981, which was Bruno Sammartino's retirement match. The first, it was the opening of the Meadowlands Arena, the Brendan Byrne Arena at the time, and it was Bruno's retirement match. I don't remember the date, but he did. I told him, I don't remember if it was on camera or off camera. I said, my first match was your retirement. He goes, October 4th, 1981. I said,
wow.
So it was that. It was the wonderment of the real life superhero. Right. Then, as you get a little smarter, right? You're 12, 13, 14. You're watching it and you see what's going on. Then it becomes a whole different fascination, because then you're talking about it like your friends that are DC comic fans are talking about Stan Lee and planning the next one, or in episode, in issue 78, he's going to be killed. And then, so wrestling was much the same. You're talking about the booking, trying to predict, he's a good guy, he's going to become a bad guy now. So then it became like you start to sense the business mind of it all, right? When you're in your preteen years, and then it becomes fun again from that standpoint. It's not, as mythical, real life superhero thing, but then you start to wonder, how are they going to put the storylines together? Who would be a good guy? Who would be a good bad guy? Who's believable on a microphone? You start to have opinions like that in the 80s, like this guy's matches are always boring. He's never going to be a champion, or someone who could just talk people into the ring. Like Piper punched and kicked. That was it.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter back then, because he came through the camera and he grabbed you by the throat. And that was just the wonderful thing, the art of it. It is. I hate to sound like an old man. It's listen, the guys are very athletic now. The girls are very athletic now, and risk takers, all of them. But it is an exercise in gymnastics now, more so than an art in contriving something, putting a lot of care into contriving the believability or the salability of an angle or something.
Yeah.
Do you keep up as often on modern wrestling? I mean, I know you have to to a degree, but do you sit down and watch like 3 hours of Raw and 2 hours of AEW every week?
I haven't in a long time. The last time I put any attention to, if I'm flipping by, I'll stop. But the last time I wanted to see something was when AEW started, because I had a sense that here's a group of people that are smarter than, and I don't say smarter as an IQ quotient. I'm talking about smarter in what fans are looking for than everybody up in Connecticut. So I was like, they might be able to do something here. But I knew right away the challenge is it's not 2 or 3 months of interest programming. It's got to be 52 weeks a year all the time. And so I figured it would die off after a while. But that's the last time I tuned in. I was just curious as to what Cody and everyone was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, Jonathan, did you guys want to kind of mention what kind of got you hooked on wrestling growing up?
Go ahead, Dan.
Sure. From the beginning of my life, like 3 years old, like it's like one of my earliest memories. I can remember seeing Jim Duggan and just thinking, what is this? These crazy dudes fighting each other. I mean, it was just pure magic for me. And even into my adult years, it's always been wrestling and horror films. I have so many live memories. Somebody that you did interview, Sean, I remember being there when New Jack threw Vic Grimes off the scaffold and literally thinking I witnessed a murder. I mean, that was just, there's nothing that elicits that kind of feeling out there like wrestling does. And I know, we've got 17 hours a week of wrestling today, so it's easy to get burnt out on it, but I still get that feeling once in a while, and I love wrestling, always have, from little kid.
For me, it was like 95, 96 WCW, like as soon as the giant made his debut, because at that point they were billing him at like 8'7".
Andre's
son. Andre's son. Yeah. And I remember just flipping through and seeing this gigantic person. And of course he was feuding with Hulk Hogan at that point or whatever. And he would do a missile drop kick off the top rope at that point. And I was just enamored with just what I was seeing, like this literal giant fighting. And then of course Hulk Hogan killed him, threw him off a building. And I just kind of stuck around after that, and that was right at the beginning of the wrestle boom in the 90s.
Didn't you want, after the building, didn't you want Loomis to lean over and look down, and he's not there?
Exactly.
Oh no, brother.
He's gone home. Have they just killed it with all these Halloweens and then jumping the chronology with it, like the last one, which was supposed to be the first one, but I'll continue. But like, then were you supposed to forget any others ever happened?
See, I'm good with it.
Too much right now.
I'm good with. I really liked 2018. I'm in the minority there. But I'm good with them just being like, hey, here's what you need to know. Don't think of anything past this movie and we can enjoy this. I wish they'd do more of that shit. Like take a random sequel in the middle. Like make a sequel to part 6 again. Like I'd be cool with that. But it's not going to make money. But
while we're talking Halloween, Sean, Halloween 3, you're a fan or not?
I'm waiting for the sequel to Season of the Witch. I want the next season of The Witch. It's not coming.
Season 2 of The Witch.
Everyone knows the Silver Shamrock song. Come on, whether people like it or not, it's memorable.
Yes.
Yeah, I wish they would have just, it kind of peaked after 2 and just go off of that. That was a great movie too. But everybody,
you guys can tell me. You guys are the experts. I heard the reason it was disconnected was that they were going to make the franchise an anthology series where all editions of Halloween's would be about a masked company, a ghost, or whatever, and it was going to be unrelated to Mike Myers. Is that true?
100% true.
People just complained they wanted the guy in the mask. I think they would have been better off going that direction. I mean,
more money for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we could be on like Halloween 40 by now.
Yeah.
It's funny, Jonathan, you were talking about the Giant when you were, it's kind of what hooked you. You know, now he's the hot new signing for AEW. So
I saw that. You think they're going to do Shaq versus Paul White, I guess now?
Probably.
The large performance or whatever they're going to call him.
Now, you see, let me just throw my 2 cents in. Aren't we now, isn't the hot new differently minded company now just repeating the errors of every federation that went?
They're doing the TNA.
Yeah.
I mean, no disrespect to Paul White. I mean, legend, but I don't know.
Now, in their defense, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying he's only got so much time left in the ring. I mean,
in their defense, I believe he was brought on for like a commentator role. I don't think it was
both.
Is it both? Okay.
Both, yeah.
Okay. Well, all right.
Yeah. I mean, I can understand doing the Shaq match. I guess it gives you attention, but
you'd be stupid not to do that match.
A month from now, how much buzz is there left? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, they're overspending.
So I wanted to ask you, Sean, in reading your book, it kind of starts out with the conversation that you had with Anthony about the alternate commentary tracks for matches. And you guys kind of got the ball rolling with that. Were you guys trying to find a way to do something involving wrestling, or was that just something that kind of spur of the moment you kind of thought, let's try it?
It was such a whim. It really was. And we were just talking on the phone, and Anthony said, you know what's never been done in wrestling? See, this is 2007, right? Or maybe might have been 2006. We were talking about, the company launched in 2007. So I guess 2006 we're talking about this. And Laserdiscs, DVDs were very big at the time, and there was always an alternate commentary track as a special feature for a lot of the DVDs, where like the director or the star would, if you selected that, you'd watch the film, but you'd hear their audio commentary track, and they would take you through scenes and tell you how things were done, how things were shot. It's like sitting beside them on the couch and watching the film. Great idea. So he said nobody's ever done that for wrestling matches. No one's ever had someone talk you through famous wrestling matches that you saw a million times. And it was literally in a 30-second span from when he said that to I said, well, I'm going to call some wrestlers. I guess, I had done nothing in the wrestling business. I was, in film and television. And at the time I was working on the cusp of finance on Wall Street. And I said, if you can confirm and find the technical end of it, meaning that similar to iTunes, which was kind of a new concept at the time, that we could get a product and it could be downloaded upon purchase. Like if you can find out how we can do that, I'll see if we can just hire some wrestlers to come in and do it. And we did exactly that. We found the Honky Tonk Man, Greg Valentine, were going to be in town for something. So we completely undercut the promoter that was bringing them in, and I called them on the phone and made a deal with them and said, can you come down the hall when you come back to your hotel? We'll be set up in a room. I'll let you know where we are in the hotel room, and we're going to do this cool thing. Have some fun now and imagine me describing to Greg Valentine what a downloadable MP3 alternate commentary track for a wrestling match is at about 10:30 at night. So once they got the hang of it, they thought it was a very cool idea. They came down, they recorded it. Super agent Eric Sims was like a bloodhound, had sniffed that money would be changing hands in the hotel, and found us, and we talked to him and explained what we wanted to do, and he said, well, listen, make it all go through me, we'll work out a deal. And And so then very quickly, we started recording a bunch of these and releasing. I think there were $3, which, you know, we're in a niche of a niche in wrestling. There's the wrestling fan, and then there's the wrestling fan who cares about the business in any capacity and wants to hear about it for endlessly. So it was apparent pretty quickly, if we wanted to stay solvent in business, we were going to have to start making some money. Now, the shoot interview was out there already, okay, but it had not been brought to another level. So we saw that as fertile ground, and I said to Anthony, I said, we need to go to video. We have to go to video, but we will do it. We can't do it with the commentary tracks. We can't show the matches. So we're going to have to put that to bed as a great idea. But here we are. We have a little bit of attention. The people that were downloading the stuff liked it. We sent a bunch of CDs of the tracks out to wrestling media who had us on shows. They weren't even called podcasts then. It was like IATA. They were radio shows. Yeah. So we knew the concept was good. We knew that, like, in a garage band kind of way, that we might not be making the music we're making right now, but there's something here that people are going to respond to, whether it was chemistry of, his idea, Anthony's ideas with the writing, and my on camera, or my questions, or my rapport with the talent, that something was going to work. So we did guest booker with Kevin Sullivan as the first. We did not have the long range business plan where we could have multiple series, each with different identities that would allow us to cover different aspects of us. It was none of that. I said, hey, you know what I'd love to hear? I'd love to sit down with a booker and just hear how they do some shit that they never got a chance to do. And so that was it. We went after Dusty and Kevin at the same time. And Kevin was the first yes to come back. So we just booked him and put him in charge of WWF in 1984. If Hogan wasn't there, what would you do? I was curious. What would a Kevin Sullivan, who was booking, do at that time if he was working for WWF and didn't get to have Hogan? So, and that's what Liftoff was for us. We had to make a lot of tweaks, and of course things changed, but that was those were the garage band years. And we put out like an 8-hour compilation on CD of all of those original commentary tracks a few years ago, and one that we never released, the Paul Orndorff sessions, never got released just because we had moved into video. Right. So they were on there too. And listening back to them, it was crazy because you could hear the nuggets of what came to be with Kayfabe Commentaries as I sat next to Orndorff or Sheik. Or Harley Race the night he grabbed my balls in the hotel room. I mean, it was great. It was a true ascension of a company. Really just made by the people. In the beginning, we spent no money on advertising. It was just word of mouth. We were active on wrestling message boards, so we would talk on message boards, and we'd have the banner under our names, and people would ask about it, or people say, oh yeah, I saw that guest booker thing. That was really cool. And it just took off by itself. And, I talk about it in my book, The Business of Kayfabe, within, a few years, the company was earning sales in the hundreds of thousands of dollars talking to wrestlers. That doesn't happen on podcasts now, I don't think. It might. Let me know.
No. It's interesting how much it's changed. I mean, I started doing podcasts in 2009, and now it's like everybody's got one in any medium. I mean, it's insane. Like every celebrity's starting one, and but it was fascinating. You guys definitely did something different, and it always stood out. Like, you forget the million interviews that people have done on podcasts, which are usually fluff. And you guys really had something cool. I still remember the commentaries and just thinking, that is awesome. I wish I had thought of it myself.
So you remember when we had the MP3 commentaries then?
Yeah, I still remember that because around that, well, you've been around maybe about a year, I guess, but when I did it, somebody asked me like, "Hey, do you want to do a podcast?" And I had no concept of what a podcast was, so I'd look into different things, and I was like, "Oh, wow, that's fascinating." I know radio, but I don't. How do you do a podcast? So yeah, and I remember just how cool that was, because I never knew I wanted it, that wrestlers would do audio commentaries on matches. It was so cool.
Yeah.
When it comes to guest booker, I know in the book he talked about regretting not being able to get Dusty and even Pat Patterson to do that show. Were there any, I guess, booking concepts that you wish that you could have had someone do?
Yeah, I wish Mike Graham would have finished his segment and booked Florida. So, I was just on a podcast last week where they were talking about that, and it was we did the front. All right, for anyone that doesn't know, guest booker is we take the creatives in wrestling, the people writing it, called bookers in wrestling, and we talk to them about their philosophies and their personal story, and then we give them a booking scenario to cover so we can watch the creative process. The way I would describe it to the layperson was, we get the writers of Friends to sit down and write an episode of Star Trek, and we film the process to see how they do it. So when we first started, it was like all booking, and people, a vocal minority, but still, we were hearing that people were like, it's fantasy booking. Anyone could do that. So I was like, all right, well, fine. Well, let's spend more time with these people. So then we went pretty heavy on philosophy and sitting with the individual booker and profiling their mind and how they think and the decisions they made. And then there was too much of that. People said, "No, we're 20 minutes of booking. This is a ripoff." So all right, so we got to go right down the middle here. We got to go half discussion and then half booking. Well, Mike Graham, we had a fascinating half discussion of Florida and his dad, Eddie Graham, and we got to the booking part. And off camera, not really off camera, you didn't see it, but we have a policy that we never cut camera, so everything is on tape. But we were talking to Mike, and he's like, I can't do this. What do you want? He's like, can you help me? So we all start throwing out ideas, and we're booking, and me and Anthony and the crew are now booking. And Mike's going, yeah, okay, all right, I'll say that. I said, but just say anything, Mike. Let's just roll with it. Anything that comes to mind. And he tried a couple of times, and he said, I can't do it. I said, all right. I said, well, we need a show, so let's just talk in general terms about some of the talent and how you would have used them or whatever. We get back downstairs, and he joins whoever for dinner. There were a lot of people in town. I think Sullivan was in town. I think this was the weekend we did the roast, one of the ring roasts. So we had a lot of talent in town. So the bar, restaurant, pub was active. So he sits down with Billy Graham and Terry Funk and Kevin Sullivan. I think Sullivan leaned over and said, how'd you do with the booking exercise? And Mike Graham goes, I booked my way out of it, and goes to dinner. I said, motherfucker, you booked your way out of it. So it leaves me thinking there, like, okay, so that whole thing was a work. He didn't want to do it. I don't know. I never asked him, but that was the story about why you only saw half of a show on Mike Graham.
Do you find that PC culture now would make it kind of hard to do some of these interviews and make them really interesting, particularly the more salacious stuff? I mean, is it possible even to do it anymore like it used to be?
I think about, irrespective to me, I just think about comedy in general. Imagine trying to write a show, like just put on 30 Rock.
Yeah.
Okay. Which was never really, no one was clutching their chest and gasping at the TV with anything that was said. It was a broadcast show. But just on there, some of the jokes with Tracy Morgan about race would be so unacceptable now. And it was not mean-spirited at the time, and I don't think it was ever taken that way, but you just couldn't go there. Now, there wouldn't even be an opportunity for you to find out whether people thought it was mean-spirited or not. No network would let you air it. So Those are the big guys. Now, come down another level. I'm sure we could do. Listen, New Jack.
Yeah.
If you sit down with New Jack, you're not getting a show that's airable for PC culture anyway.
Yeah.
But you certainly can't do it in the big league. Like WWE is a public company, so forget about that. Anything approaching anything off color or anything that challenges the conventions, right? You can't even challenge the conventions now. Like it used to be, you could challenge religion a little bit with storylines or tease it. As Sullivan made a career of, without ever saying devil. But now you can't even innuendo. It's not going to work. You can't do it. That's it. So yeah, I don't know if I sat down next to and anyone who was on You Shoot ever, if I could do it now. I don't know that the fan base. I guess the core fan base would be fine with it because they connect to the hoe bags of old.
Yes.
But
best segment ever.
Yeah. Missy Hyatt. Wow.
No, I was going to ask about that one specifically. Like,
Go ahead.
Did Missy Hyatt know before she got there that you were going to hand her a bunch of dicks and be like, all right, which one of these looks like Ric Flair's? Real quick.
No, because you know what? Because think about how contrived. If we told people the games that we were going to play, think of how contrived all the answers would be. The thing that makes them great is the reactions. Jim Cornette's face when we play like the shit list, and I have to bring up all these things he hates, and he's ranking them, and it's getting worse and worse. By the time I get to Jim Hurd, he's like, "Oh boy, there's no room on the board." If he had come in with his top 5 prepared, it wouldn't have worked. Now, we didn't sabotage. We didn't like sneak attack these guys and gals to make them look bad. But I would tell them beforehand the format and what we were going to do. But if they had too many details, I've given some wrestlers the script before, which is not sometimes people made a big deal of it, but there's no interview show out there where the talent doesn't know the question. I mean, everyone knows that there is a pre-interview on Jimmy Kimmel and all that, and everything's agreed to beforehand what's going to be discussed. So we don't go that in depth, but there are times that I will give a script if they're going to read it. Sometimes they say, I will just talk about it. Don't worry about it. Don't tell me anything. But particularly for like the timelines where they have to remember something that might be 30 years ago, I'll give them the research beforehand to jog their own memory so that they can come on and be prepared with a story. But no, Missy did not know what was in store for her. But, we get a sense pretty early on. The people we ask to be on You Shoot are a certain breed of wrestler. And they've got to be able to roll with it. And I think to a name, with the exception of China, they were able to.
Mm-hmm. Was there ever somebody that you felt just a little bit intimidated, like maybe I shouldn't ask him that? I know a lot of people asked in that I talked to about this interview about New Jack, who I've met and is super nice, but was there somebody that, like, man, I don't know?
No, not Jack. Jack and I were always good. The only time I ever really thought, and I might have deserved it, I think it's in one of the books, King Kong Bundy's on Supercard. Okay, a show we did right towards the end. And I tell him on camera that George Steele, when he was a road agent, told a story that when he was a road agent, he approached King Kong Bundy backstage and said, "You're not a top guy around here. You had one big run." And
wow. And
he lit up. He goes, "He fucking said that mother," and he went into a tirade, minutes long, about like destroyed him verbally, and just kept going. Even after we got off it and we're talking about other things, he's like, "Sean, did he really fucking say that about me?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "It's in the trailer." And the only thing I remember, listen, I edit these things and then they're gone because we're on the next one. At one point, we were doing 18 productions a year. And anyone who's in production knows that's 18 full-length shows that are written, edited, shot, released, the artwork, ads bought, all that stuff. And it was quite a hamster wheel. So I didn't remember. I just remembered that moment from the trailer. So I hand my phone to Adam on the crew. I said, Adam, bring up the trailer show the Bundy. So Adam goes out to the hallway and he finds it. He comes back in. I said, you get it? He's like, yes, but you should probably watch it closely. George Steele says in it, and it's so low and quick. He says, yeah, Chief says, Bundy, you're not a top guy. He was talking about Strongbow.
Oh,
not himself. Bundy looks at this thing and he goes, you motherfucker. He goes, you got me to say all that shit. I said, Chris, stop a minute. I am so sorry. This was an honest mistake. He goes, no way. You tricked me to say a bunch of shit to put on your video. I said, no, Chris, I swear it. I will cut it. You have my word. Ask anybody in this business. When I give them my word about something on production, it happens. I will cut it. And obviously I did. But that was the only moment where I said, if he stands up and gives me the Atlantic City Avalanche, I'll take it.
I saw him yell at a promoter once because the music was too loud while he was trying to, sell his autographs.
Yeah, he was an interesting dude.
Yeah.
He kind of brings me to my next question. You guys had almost like an Ultimate Warrior type experience with Gary Hart. You did your show and then went home, passed away. And of course, there's a number of people you guys worked with that are no longer with us. Who was the toughest on you to lose?
Gary, because listen, China was, I think everyone knew the China story wasn't going to end well.
Yeah.
No one wanted it that way, but I think everyone sensed that there was a point of no return that had been crossed there. And, Mike Graham, suicide. But for what it was with Gary, two things. First of all, we loved Gary Hart. It was the only time I'd met him. I had just seen him on television as a kid, so I didn't know what we were going to get. And I didn't get to talk to him beforehand. That's also another thing that's very tough. When I don't get to talk to a talent beforehand and we sit down cold before the lights and the cameras, that is the worst way to break ice. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get to talk to him beforehand. Even when we were walking to the room, when he got to the hotel, he was with the promoter that had brought him in, and they were talking about schedule and a bunch of shit. And it wasn't until we walked in and sat down that I had any time with him. But on camera, he was great. We had a great rapport. And then afterwards, he said, guys, sit down. You're working so hard. Sit down. Let's watch some boxing. He turned on the TV. There was a pay-per-view. I think it was UFC. There was a pay-per-view on. We sat. And he was Uncle Gary, like automatically. We were leaving, and Craig on the crew, a rather large tattooed beard, not unlike Daniel, the beard, a lover of Harley Davidsons, and Craig from behind me as we're walking to the van says, "Dude, I'm gay for Gary Hart." And we all were. He was just so great. We left knowing that we had such a great addition to the show. My phone starts blowing up the next morning. And the first text I read, there was a bunch of messages and stuff, but the first text I read was from James from Legends of the Ring. He says, "Did Gary Hart die?" I said, "No, I was with him till the wee hours of the morning." And then the super agent Eric Sims rings my phone, and I say hello, and he says, "You got history there, brother." And I knew what he was talking about. And I was shocked, but it was later in the day. Might have been it was actually the next day. It was the Monday. Dad, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number from Texas. And I pick it up, and it's a troubled voice who says, "Is this Sean?" I said, "Yeah." "Who's this?" He said, "My name's Jason. I'm Gary Hart's son." He just wanted to know. I was one of the last people to see his father. Like, was he okay? Did he suffer? Did you see anything wrong? It was a conversation I wasn't prepared to have, and it blew me away because it just the reality of it came home. It was a wrestler I worked with who passed away, and that's, horrible enough as it is. His son's on the phone asking me what I saw, and I said, "Jason," I said, "first of all, I want to tell you that your father was loved by all of us. His show will be great. Don't worry about that." But no, he was warm and funny and witty, and he booked the whole show. There was nothing wrong with your dad when we were with him. And then it became a matter of, what do I do with the show? I didn't want to metaphorically stand on his casket and hawk merchandise. So Jason called me back and said, "My family trusts you," and they asked around, and we trust you, and whatever you want to do with the show, we know will be best. So that was like, I almost wish he said, "Do this," because then that was added responsibility. I just knew I didn't want to release it yet. I didn't want to put it out. I wanted some time for everybody to talk about Gary, and I didn't want the show to be about Gary Hart's death. I wanted it to be about his life, because that's what we talked about, his brain, his mind, and his passion and booking. And so we waited about 6 months. We cut a little trailer real quick just to let people know, that it's coming. It's on YouTube. It's just short little vignettes of him. And I said to Jason, I said, "Will you do me a favor? I don't know what I'm going to do at your father's show yet. I know it's going to be a little different, but will you send me pictures? Just send me pictures of you and your brother with your dad. Nothing wrestling. No, not with wrestlers, but just fishing or him holding you as a baby, or just something." I just knew that it had to be a little more personal. And so those photos are in that pre-trailer. And we put those photos at the end of the show. We ran the end credits over pictures of Gary with his kids, and we dedicated the show to Chad and Jason, his sons, and that's how we handled it.
No, it's a great tribute.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, for sure.
But one more thing, someone asked me about that the other night, and I kicked myself when I got off the podcast because I didn't mention Balls Mahoney for a minute. And the thing with Balls Mahoney, again, the humanizing element. If it was just Balls, I know Balls, and I knew Balls' issues. And true story, it's in the book. One of the last times I saw Balls, I said, "You look good, dude." He's like, "All right, let me tell you, I am clean. I don't drink anymore. I don't do anything. All I need are my opiates, and I'm fine." So that was Balls. So, but you know what it was? I used to see his little boy with him at the shows. And when I heard about Balls, Chris was the first thing I thought about. He would sit back in the locker room, play his Game Boy, and play with the boys, and he was just always there. And his dad was working. He didn't watch the matches, but his dad was working in the ring, and then Balls would come out, and he'd take one side of Balls' bag, Balls would take the other. They'd leave, and I just remember those nights watching him go home with Balls, and that's another time. It's like, okay, crazy world of wrestling, crazy Balls. First time I've said crazy Balls on air, by the way. But no, Chris, you think about Chris, and it's like, it just stops you cold.
Yeah.
And you see these guys and it's one of the things. I wrote a book called Father's Blood about guys that were parents during the kayfabe era, because I wanted to talk about how they protected their kids, but also from the kids' perspectives also. Having a dad who was a pro wrestler in the 70s or 80s, did it take a toll? Was it the coolest thing in the world? So I picked a bunch of wrestlers and kids of wrestlers like Bam Bam's son, and I talked to them about that. So,
yeah, lots of people gone too soon, for sure. Yeah. I know Dan has a question kind of related to this, and I'll let him follow up. But who do you think were some of the most intelligent people that you worked with on the shows?
The three of you.
Yes.
The guys that I always that I enjoyed spending time with were the ones that we didn't talk about wrestling, like Sullivan, Nash, guys that I just enjoyed being with because we talked about real estate prices and the South Florida market or something that was going on politically. Those are the times that those guys kind of stand out. You almost forget that it's time to talk about wrestling when you sit down in front of the cameras and you get snapped back into it. So just like general intelligence, guys like Sullivan and Nash, but then then there's the wrestling smart guys, the guys that when you sit down, you talk to them for a few minutes, and there's a wisdom to their philosophy, or there's just an insight into the business that you hadn't thought of, or it's not part of a work. It's just like Corny's great. Corny's a smart guy. I mean, Cornette's funny. People usually tune in to hear him go off and to be entertaining. He's a smart guy. He's so ensconced though in that in that period though, and the rules and the tenets of that period. Just like Russo, I'll be fair with equal time. Russo will talk about the later product with great insight, and about what you had to do when you were not doing 1 hour a week. You were doing like 6 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. And it was now the quarter ratings game. The ratings game, when the guys in the 80s were booking, was the gate at the Omni or at Madison Square Garden. That was your ratings on your weekly show. But it became something different in the CNN, Time Warner, Turner era, where quarter-hour ratings were being looked at on the same par as, Friends or whatever the weekly show was. They were expected to perform similarly. That's a whole separate set of pressures. You could take 4 weeks and build up the big Bob Roop Black Bart angle at one time, but it was a quick fix. Things had to happen at such a pace in the Monday Night War eras, for lack of a better term. And Russo can speak very eloquently about that, but doesn't have respect for the time that Corny's talking about. So they are a head and a tail of a coin. There are some guys that can transcend that you can talk to, that I've talked to about the old stuff. And who had a great conversation with me along similar lines? You'd be surprised, maybe because of his daughter. He was smart. Tully Blanchard, I was at dinner with. And it's funny, like he, of course, understands the Horseman era and all that booking, but he was talking very, very intelligently about the current product. So there are those handful of guys that understand the responsibilities and don't put down one or the other. They just understand the difference between them and have insight into it. So there are some of those type guys that are fun to talk to.
Yeah.
JJ Dillon would be another one that I would put in also.
I feel like I probably know the answer to this question, but is there any amount of money in the world that could get Russo and Cornette?
No. No. I asked one time because I had to. I'm a content producer. I'm not doing my job if I don't try to do that. But I knew the answer beforehand, and I didn't expect it. And I didn't even ask Russo. I asked Corny. because I knew he would be the first no, and that would be it. And that was it. It was a very short discussion. But, honestly, people still ask me about it and ask me if it can happen and if I could step in and help Conrad get them together. But and I'm honestly asking the three of you, does anyone care anymore?
Oh, I think they would.
Oh, yeah. I think even if it was just a one-off kind of thing, just to put those two in a room and let them yell at each other.
Don't we know what they're going to say? We can write it for them.
Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe it would surprise you. I don't know. Maybe at the end of it, they could come to some kind of an agreement.
Right.
I don't know about that, but
I maybe on something.
Or some blood would be spilled. So
yeah, either way.
I was going to say,
I got money on Cornette, by the way. I got money on Cornette all day.
You know what, though? I'll tell you this much from the inside. It became. We talked about it a little bit on Russo's Breaking Kayfabe that he did with us. It became serious outside of the wrestling media. Having to move homes because of threats and so it's just something that's so ugly and unnecessarily ugly. I suspect, this is me talking, and Cornette, you can come on a show with me and talk about it if you want. I suspect this has a lot more to do with
being replaced.
Cornette perceiving, right or wrong, I don't know, perceiving Russo costing him a livelihood for himself and his wife. This intense passion and hatred cannot be because of the integrity of Bob Roop's latest match. He's always a fun one to pull when you want to laugh. Not latest match, but match from the 80s or any booking philosophy or anything that Russo did on TV. I think it's personal and it has to do with Russo. If it happened this way, getting Jim fired. And I know that's Jim. I think that's probably Jim's take on it. I don't know if that's what happened, but I think that's Jim's take on it. And that's why the intense amount of personal hatred.
Yeah. I always thought maybe if you could get them talking about something I don't know, HBK back in the locker room, then it's not, that they might have some sort of same take on, but that might be I guess that's the one we'll never get, but
it's the Larry Bird, Magic Johnson story of the wrestling aftermarket. You look at those two basketball players, flashy, urban. That Magic Johnson goes to LA, blue collar, scrapping for the ball under the hoop, work ethic. Larry Bird goes to Boston, and from across the country, they meet in the finals every few years after having met in the NCAA finals in college. Well, here's, corny, product of Memphis and WCW and his booking philosophy, and we all know what he sounds like. And Vince Russo, we all know what he sounds like, a product of the New York product and the era where you could talk about abortions and miscarriages, and that's a good angle because people are tuning in. So it's very much the same dichotomy, and that's part of, I think, what fuels it. I think if Larry Zbyszko and Bob Roop were angry with each other, it just wouldn't have that draw.
Right.
Do you do a Cornette? I need to hear a Cornette impression.
Yeah, I love doing Cornette because my Cornette was to tell, when I would tell people that what you see is Jim Cornette all the time. Mm-hmm. That's Jim Cornette. He's not turning it on for the camera. I said, at home, Stacy is the greatest wife alive because at home when he cuts a promo on the remote when they can't find it. He's like, motherfucking promo, goddamn son of a bitch. The fucking thing was here the other day, Stacy. On the couch. I don't understand where the fucking thing goes. It does become invisible shit. Everything from the remote to dinner everything is said is contested with such passion. No doubt.
You talked a lot about impressions in your book. Do you have one you think you do the best?
Well, you'd have to tell me. I don't know. There are some that I had to take some time with, like okay, I do profile Tony Atlas in Father's Blood. Okay, we're talking about a generation of political correctness. However, if you've heard Tony talk, I would not be authentic with my impression if I had Tony Atlas show up in the pages of Father's Blood speaking like this. So there was that fine line between making something become, a step and fetch it routine versus, something that was authentically Tony. So yes, there was some effort I had to put into toning down my Tony so that it was believable but still sounded like Tony Atlas. The toughest guys to do are people who are nondescript, like Eric Bischoff is in that book. So when I was doing the audio book, I had to speak as him a few times, and it's just, Eric speaks like I speak, so there wasn't much I could do there. So the more of a caricature the person is, and thank God most of the guys in wrestling from that era are caricatures one way or another. The more of a caricature they are, the easier it is to channel them.
I really like that Lanny Poffo. I don't think I've ever seen anybody do a Lanny Poffo impression.
No, really? Oh, he's one of my favorites to do. Yeah. And I've never seen Antonino Rocco's penis, but I hear it's fantastic.
Or hearing him trying to suck his own dick.
Yeah. I had to bring it up on no pun intended on our edition of Breaking Kayfabe. He mentioned it. I said, Lanny, look, it's in the cards, so I gotta ask: limber or large? And he said, both.
Oh wow!
So I gotta ask, we have this recurring thing on some of our shows. Jonathan Mr. Bombastic gets requested to do an Al Pacino impression that he does. Do you have an Al Pacino?
Yes. There's two. There's early Al Pacino. Before
Dog Day Afternoon Pacino
understood that he could make more money by just screaming all the time. Anything, anytime. If you scream it, I don't know. People pay attention. You get more work. Things happen if you scream the line.
So Jonathan, what's your Pacino think about that impression?
Oh, you come in here trying. I don't know. Hang on. Where am I going with this? Fuck. I'll just go with the line from a fucking movie. You can fuck my wife, but you cannot watch my TV.
Yeah, we're in the same wheelhouse, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I want to know. What happened to Al Pacino? Like somewhere around like 85, like he just like loses it, and he's
you know what happened?
Where the fuck am I?
There was a conscious decision. That's a wonderful actor. I mean, you look at all these roles of that emit a sensitivity. Okay. And then there's a very definite decision that was made.
Yes.
That I will now scream all the time
and be confused just constantly.
It happened with The Scent of a Woman.
Scent of a Woman. Ooh.
And then, you know what? I see the trailer after Scent of a Woman. I'm like, well, all right, enough screaming. Maybe now he'll play. He was a blind army colonel. I mean, he didn't have to scream. So I said, well, maybe the next film he'll tone it down. I was such a fan. He'll tone it down. What's the following film? The Devil's Advocate. He's now going to play Satan. I said, forget it. There's no chance. He's going to be so lost on such a road after this You want to talk about screaming? He's going to play the devil incarnate. And that was it. It was everything since then. Heat.
It's worked.
Heat.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Heat is amazing.
Yeah. When I think of an ass, a woman's ass, I don't know, does something to me.
Yes.
So you've worked on a lot of films yourself, and there's one in particular, because it doesn't get any attention, and it's a shame, that I wanted to ask about, and that's John Waters' Cecil B. Demented.
Yeah.
Good movie out there, guys. If you probably haven't heard of it, but go and see it if you can.
John Waters was quitting smoking when we did this. And so he, as a substitute for his oral fixation, he began to chew toothpicks. Not the same toothpick. He would, like a hamster, gnaw a toothpick and drop it. So if he was seated, given enough time, which was about 20 minutes, it looked like a beaver had worked prior to his sitting there, and he was surrounded by wood. So for the entire thing, Waters was gnawing on these toothpicks incessantly. I wonder if he stayed off cigarettes. That was a long time ago. I hadn't seen him since then, so I don't know. But he, another funny thing, he was fun to talk to. There's sometimes that, like, when there's downtime, the best part of any production is just talking with somebody who's like been there, done that. A lot of these people think this shit doesn't stink, but the ones that'll sit down and tell stories, generally the rule, by the way, for wrestling and entertainment, the bigger the name, the cooler they are. Wow. There's nothing to prove. So, but Waters was one of those guys who just had so many stories. Somebody asked him, what was the most fucked up thing that you ever got asked to autograph? And someone was like, "Do you ever have to sign someone's dick?" He goes, "Please, dicks, tits, that was fine." He goes, "The only thing that threw me when I was at a bar, someone threw their colostomy bag up on the bar and asked me to sign it."
Strangely appropriate, though.
Right, exactly. I couldn't find the connection. I thought about it for a moment. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. Pink flamingos.
If you were ever in Baltimore, it was so funny because you could go into like just this little comic shop or whatever, anywhere, and everybody has like a John Waters story. Oh, I know John. He's here every Tuesday. He's just such a big personality.
Yeah, he is. But he's a serious dude, with a serious filmmaker. He's like, he loves the craft. I know that so much of like the early stuff gets, like midnight movie type. Dismissal, but he was authentically that guy. He couldn't have made Titanic. So the stuff he made were works of passion, and he took it seriously. I mean, that's the only way you get to work that long, and he was really responsible. He wasn't part of this like. There was a wild crowd around him all the time, but he was the geek in the crowd. Like, he wasn't like the crazy druggy guy. He was the nerd in the group, the sheep herder kind of, wrangling all the people around him. But, he was a serious filmmaker.
Yeah, no, some of his earlier stuff like Multiple Maniacs, not one a lot of people have seen. It's like the fact that he made that. Yeah, that time period is just mind blowing.
Yeah, it is crazy that half the shit got made, and he's financing it all himself a lot of times, or just finding these fringe investors.
And before we move off of this, you also worked on another film which I feel like does not get any credit whatsoever in the horror community, The Blair Witch 2: Book of Shadows. Anything interesting from that? Or
well, when I got called for it, I had seen Blair Witch 1, and so I was very confused. I said, "All right, so what? It's fake now again? So it's a script now? Like, where they found an interesting Joe
Berlinger.
Berlinger, yeah, had an interesting way to tie it all together. But at first, I was like really confused. But my one takeaway from that was there's a scene I was voicing. I did voice work on it, as I did for 99% of the things that are my credits. The scene is they are hosing down a in a psych ward in a mental hospital. If I'm not, help me with this. If I'm not mistaken, using fire hoses to wash this guy down in the corner of a shower stall in a mental hospital where they're going to mistreat people, or a prison maybe. I don't know. Anyway, they want some audio of the guy that might be holding the hose. This takes place in the hills of somewhere south of me. So I'll go right to an unpolitically correct audio stereotype, and I'm screaming like this. Yeah, let me hear you. You fuck like my sister. I'm screaming. So I didn't know what I was going to say. They said they just wanted it vile and to sound like an assault. So I said, all right, just turn the mic on. I'll come up with something. So I do the take. I turn around, and in the studio with me, he had come in during the take, was the New York City, the New York Channel 4 news anchor, Chuck Scarborough. A very, if you know who he is, a very official, the parted hair kind of thing. And he's standing there like this after I'm screaming about fucking your sister. He didn't know what I was doing, probably. The video's on the wall, but I don't know. So I turned and I said, hey, Chuck. And he goes, well, that was interesting. And he leaves and goes in. For me, it was a surreal moment, because what the fuck is the local news anchor doing in the studio while I'm screaming? Turns out in the film there's a news story, I guess, and he was coming in to voice his the news anchor part of it. But that was turning around and having Chuck Scarborough treated to my tapestry of profanity. It's my takeaway from Blair Witch 2.
And I also have to ask about one more, because somebody was very curious about American Psycho.
Yeah, let me tell you, dude. I went in, I did this film. I said, who the fuck is going to watch? I don't know. I didn't know what to make of this thing.
Had you read the book?
I hadn't. No, the Bret Easton Ellis book. No, I hadn't at the time. I did since, but at the time I didn't. So I didn't know what I was in for. And I mean, it was camp, So I just walked away like, oh, well, here's one no one will see. So now, back in the day, people have to understand, this is a different time. This is before Netflix. So the way you got to watch something after you saw it in the theaters, or maybe you couldn't get to the theaters, the way you watched it was you bought a DVD. I know, novel concept now, right?
I've never done that before.
Right, exactly. But back in the day, people bought DVDs, and it was wonderful for anybody who was in the business, because the residuals were wonderful for DVD, for the aftermarket on DVD. If a film is a hit, in the theater, we're paid for the theatrical, and then anything after that is where you make your residuals forever. So if something's a hit, then you're like, yes, okay, this is going to pay for a long time. American Psycho was in and out of the theater. It didn't have a box office at all. But I don't know how to do this without sounding like a douchebag, but the amount of money that had in an afterlife, I still can't explain it. And I still don't know why. Just because of the intense cult following, maybe. It just, what it's sold on, it's probably second, like.
I've bought it 4 times that I know of.
What's that?
I've bought it 4 times that I know.
All right, well that's it then, I guess. People, it was crazy. But even the first year, not over 10 years. I'm talking about like the first 2 years. I couldn't believe it was coming in the mail for just that one film. Like The Sixth Sense was the biggest moneymaker I ever did in ancillary sales. Maybe Sex and the City, but I did 4 years of the show, so I don't count that because that's multiple episodes, and it was in syndication, so it was on every night.
You were the voiceover for Carrie, right? Like that's how that was.
What's that?
You were the voiceover for Carrie at the beginning of the show, right? That's what you did on Sex and the City.
Actually, all of them, all of her voiceovers were there. The American Psycho was a ridiculous moneymaker in the secondary market. which taught me such a huge lesson. Don't look at box office. Like, that's not necessarily indicative of the people's passion. That has a lot to do with how many theaters you could get it into in the first place, which is a political game and a studio game. But the people found it afterwards. I was shocked, Daniel. I really was shocked.
So do they just kind of screw you on like the streaming rights to stuff? Like, do they not give you anything for that, or?
No, you do. It's just, it's,
same way with music, I'd say, very,
it's nothing now.
It's
I did this in my book. Let's just take a DVD, right? If you wanted to own Halloween years ago, maybe you paid $14.99 for it, or $10, right? When it was new, when it would come out, they'd do a new release of it, and maybe it's $15. So the value, we can set the value. The value of owning Halloween on DVD is $15. But I own it and I can watch it when I want, whenever. The value of this DVD is $15. Today, at any given time, there's about 5,000 programs on Netflix. If you divide the $8 a month you spend by that, it's 0.0004 cents per show. So the value overnight, Mr. Bombastic, overnight, the value of one movie went from $15 to 0.0004 cents. What do you think that did for my residual?
Do you even cash it at that point, or I know a lot of people frame it?
There's a check for 12 cents for last year.
Here are my uncashed penny. Let's see what we have here. Here is,
Save it up, get you $1.
Now, these are all past. What year is this? 2016, 2013. Here you go. There's 19 cents for you right there, right?
Damn.
There you go. There's 30.
This is show business, people.
There's 37 cents for you there. So now they do direct deposit, thank God. But so I realized how many. God, I have a lot of these little souvenirs here, which I don't even think I can put in anymore, right? It's like they expire after a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
I had something here that I showed on a podcast because it had just come in the mail when we were doing the podcast this week. And I tore it up. But it was my foreign, it was some foreign residuals for a few countries. It was like Colombia, Spain, Portugal, a few other countries, for like 85 films. It was pages of the invoice was pages and pages and pages. Then you get to the check at the end. Right. I think 85 films for about, like, I don't know, 10 countries, let's say, right? Where is it?
Oh, wow.
There you go. There you go. There's 85 movies for you.
Yeah.
In all those European countries, right? So I don't know. There's your answer. The business is different now. It's just something you have to accept. There is still some money in network, right? Because that still kind of works the same way. You're on CBS and you're guaranteed a rerun, right? So you're getting paid twice for the same show. People think that all these big movie stars moved to television because they saw the integrity of the programming that was being written on television. Yeah. No, it was your guaranteed reruns versus that check I just showed you for your movies.
Yeah.
The money went to TV, not movies. And that's why so many people went to TV too.
Yeah. Yeah, still are huge names moving to TV these days. So probably everybody at this point.
As long as like regular TV will be around, I suppose. So.
Right.
No, that's true too. Yeah.
Well, we're getting a few questions in the comments here. We'll get to those shortly. A couple more wrestling things, and then we'll get to that and start wrapping things up. But Dan, I know you wanted to ask a little bit about Raven.
I did. He was always a fascinating guy. I've met him, but didn't really obviously get to have a conversation like you, because he is a legit genius. He was a member of Mensa, I believe. What was he like behind the scenes? He's always been fascinating to me.
Scotty's awesome. Scotty's difficult. He's cantankerous, and it's wonderful. He he was such a pain in the ass. I booked him for guest booker. He's the only person on guest booker that wasn't actually a booker, because so many people said he had a great mind for the business. We said, well, screw it. Let's put him on. Let's see how he does. And he didn't want to know anything beforehand. He wanted to do it all off the fly. So, we have a very good Breaking Kayfabe with him. I suggest you check it out, where he's admitted to a lot of his shortcomings in his later years. But back in the day, he's a very insecure guy. So Raven would spend the first, significant amount of time with you, showing you how much smarter than you he is. So we sat down one time down to eat before shooting the guest booker. He had prime rib, and we treated him to a nice dinner. He was rather antisocial during dinner. We go up, we shoot the show. Throughout it, he begins to complain from getting dizzy from hunger, that he's being starved by the crew of the show. He then makes a demand for an apple, some apple turnover or something that he seems to think they have at the restaurant downstairs. They didn't. And he was, and then it was like, okay, can you guys just maybe drive me to a 7-Eleven or something like that? You get 7-Eleven around here or something like that? So we're breaking down the set. I have someone driving to the 7-Eleven. I pass him in the hallway. We're leaving. I say goodbye. I thank him for the show. He's got 2 shopping bags. He's flying back out the next morning to Atlanta. He's got 2 shopping bags full. I mean 10 boxes full of cereal. And to spend the remainder of the evening in the hotel room and then get on a plane the next day. Very odd. So then the next time we see him, we're shooting a show, and he wanders into the room. He's not on the show. He's not on any of my shows. He wanders onto the set and sits down in the corner. And during a break, he's like, you guys, I should just tell you something. Like, you guys like laughing off camera and stuff. Why don't you just laugh on camera? This makes it funny, man. It's like Howard Stern show or something like that. You just laugh on camera. I said, Scotty, right. Sometimes they laugh on camera, sometimes they don't. I said, I know you. Why do you have to do this every time you're around? But then I hired him for Raven's Wrestler Rescue. It was a series that we did where he would give indie wrestlers a makeover. And I had to work so closely with him throughout that I came to just love the guy. He and his authentic cantankerousness. Imagine walking around being the only guy in Mensa in a wrestling locker room. It would do something to you. You'd start to want to let people know I don't belong here. But the most fascinating thing about Scotty was his dad, I had him on my show to talk about it, and then he was on Breaking Kayfabe. His father was the editor of the National Enquirer through the 80s. So I could have talked to him. I could have done 10 episodes. But eventually we had to cover wrestling, so I had to get off it. But just about what it was like watching his father run that magazine and how it worked. Was the stuff true? Did he make it up? Was he like hiding? Did he pay people to hide in closets and restaurants to get pictures of people? So that whole thing was fascinating about how his father, Paul Levy, who ran the magazine for years, operated, and their headquarters was in Florida. It wasn't even in Los Angeles. It wasn't even in LA. It was like, so that was fascinating about Scotty. I was talking to him about his father and the magazine, and then also he on that edition of Breaking Kayfabe began to become very honest about his insecurities, and I remember talking about how his father was kind of like an insult comic. He was like a Don Rickles type. Mm-hmm. But when you're 4 and 5 and 6, you don't always want to hear how stupid you are. So it took a long-term effect on him, I think. And he's I really like him, I have to say. I understand why people have a hard time with him. And he's got to eat. He's got to eat a lot too. Like, and that's tough to be around. Somebody who has to eat.
I think my favorite Raven story, and I don't know if it's true, I can't remember if he addressed it in that interview, but was walking around the locker room naked, and I guess Deborah happened to be there, and then Austin threatened to beat his ass. I don't know if it was true.
But I didn't even hear that. That's interesting. No.
Might be
and
one
he did talk about his father, who was, to quote him, this is all from Raven, I'm not shooting on his father, was rather rotund, and he would remember his father's balls would hanging
out of his
comfy
underwear.
Yeah, he would talk about it. We spent a significant amount of time talking about the testicles hanging out, and I guess I made an incorrect racial joke about, well, and that's odd that anything would hang down that low because he's Jewish, and Scotty goes, Jews have huge cocks. What are you talking about? I was schooled by Raven once again.
Love it.
So I wanted to ask you. You talked in your book about trying to get Mick Foley in Abyss, and you ran into that issue with the companies they were working with, and that whole independent contractor thing. Andrew Yang was pretty outspoken on that the last several months, and talking about if Joe Biden was elected, he would know who he would need to talk to get something done about that. Do you think we'll see some action taken on that anytime soon?
It's I don't know how. Well, Scotty, by the way, is one of the people that sued in a class action lawsuit. You know what though? It went on so long, the statute of limitations expired, so he couldn't pursue it. But that is one of the clearest, most open and shut. I mean, there's not even a legal debate to be had.
Yeah.
If you are a 1099 employee, if you are a 1099 contractor, that means you're not an employee. And there are very clear cut. Go to the IRS website, guys. There are very clear cut cans and can'ts between a contractor and an employee. And if you just go down the contractor list, wrestling has violated every one of them unabashedly,
repeatedly.
Talent. You can't work anywhere else, and you're not allowed to do that. You absolutely cannot preclude. Listen, the same rules would apply for you hiring a plumber. Okay, let's say as a person, but let's say you own a company. The 4x4 Podcast Incorporated. Okay, you have to have a contractor come and do some work on the house. Can you imagine telling him, listen, if you're going to do your work here, you can't work on the building across the street? Could you imagine telling a contractor that?
Never.
It's the same thing. You can't tell them what to wear. You can't anything outside of the auspices of their performing their job for you. You cannot legislate at all. It's so clear. And I guess the courts in Connecticut are favorable to the power in Connecticut. And I don't know how many times it's been seriously challenged. I know Raven and two others were in that class action suit. But it is going to, if it's ever taken seriously by a court, it's going to change the business.
Yeah.
Because they cannot have the stranglehold that they have on talent and consider them an independent contractor. And we all know the reason that they do this is to avoid all the payroll taxes that they would have to pay and the requirements of healthcare and all the things that go with exactly workman's comp, insurance that come with hiring an employee. It is 100% being done to avoid the responsibility, the financial responsibility and the legal responsibility you take for someone when you let them work under your roof, in your buildings, and for you. So they've been dodging that. I don't know why or how it's been allowed to happen for so long, but wrestling is one of the most egregious violators of that. They always compare themselves to the National Football League and NBA, and anytime there's like piss test discussions, they want to throw themselves in league there. Yet they call themselves sports entertainment. I've been in the entertainment business a long time, and I'm part of a union, right? That the entertainment business is run by unions, from the Teamsters that get people to the set to SAG-AFTRA for the talent, Directors Guild of America, Producers Guild. So that's the entertainment. Now there's sports entertainment, right? So there's entertainment. Now let's look at sports. NBA Players Association, NFL Players Association, all collective bargaining, all union controlled. It seems to me wrestling should be twice governed with twice as much scrutiny by unions and rules of collective bargaining, and especially because it's a sport, the healthcare issues that you have to. So you see these things where like they'll put anybody in rehab. We'll pay the expense to put anybody in rehab. So it's odd, like out of both sides of the mouth, right? Like they'll take responsibility for that and say, you know, you worked for wrestling, and you know, we understand the pill situation, whatever. We're not admitting any wrongdoing, but we'll pay for your $50,000 rehab stay. Yet they won't give anyone health insurance for breaking a leg in the ring. So it can't be both ways. Some judge somewhere is going to have to smarten up and go, how the hell did this happen for so long?
Yeah. It is strange. I mean, there's a lot of violators, but they got to be at the top of the list. I don't know how they've, like you said, I guess just knowing the right people.
Yeah. And listen, I didn't name any company names. I said wrestling, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
And you would expect somebody who was on the Trump administration's small business task force, like Linda McMahon, would probably somebody who would want to fight for the rights of workers, right?
Well, WWE is such a small business.
Yes,
very small, right. Grassroots.
Right. So you can understand maybe why a small business would want to hire people as contractors, but a larger business, maybe that does a few $1 million a year, she might see the importance of having a business like that. Maybe have a formal employment contract with their workers.
Eric Bischoff had I don't know what podcast he was on. It might have been his own, but had an interesting take on that. I mean, obviously coming from what he did, I think he was a little more anti-union, but kind of the pros and cons. It was an interesting listen.
Well, I know. I mean, politically, I know what side of the fence Eric is on. So, I mean, whether he ran a wrestling company or not, I think he would have had the. Listen, are there union abuses? Of course there are, but there are industries that, without the safeguard of a union, you could have people really run roughshod over. I don't buy the argument that they just would work somewhere else. They wouldn't get anyone to work for them. We see what people will do for work and the personal sacrifices they'll make to life, liberty, health, and safety and security to provide for their families. So there are industries where it is necessary to prevent chicanery.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I guess one final question before we get to the questions in the chat. If you had to interview one person in the post John Cena era, who would you choose?
Meaning a current talent?
Yeah.
Well, it would probably be. It would not be anybody who started now. Like I would want to talk to Taker, or
for sure.
or like The Rock. I mean, they worked the post John Cena era, but nobody that came up now, I don't think. Maybe unless they're a second generation, maybe someone who's the kid of a wrestler. Yeah. I would talk to Natty Neidhart about her father, something like that. But I don't know.
Cool.
None of the baseball players that are in the ring right now. Do I want to?
Right. So we just have a few questions out here, but I'm going to start with and you shoot tradition, a video question, not by the Hess Express.
Oh, that's a shame. How's he doing?
But our good friend Christian Hannahor.
Oh my God. How you doing, Sean? I'm a massive fan.
Sorry to hear that. And he's got a professional setup. He's got an RE20 microphone, it looks like.
Yes, sir.
He's got more DVDs than Mr. Bombastic behind him. This is clearly a professional podcaster here.
I'm a professional bullshitter. Yeah. First of all, guys, thanks for having me on for this. Like I said, huge honor, Sean. Big fan. I did the audio book, which quite frankly was great because you actually sounded like really enthused telling the story, unlike some other audiobooks I'd listened to where they're just sleepwalking through it. My favorite story you told was Buff Bagwell messed stuff off of his head, and he looks at you and says, "Hey, give me a chance to kick out real quick." That's to be the funniest thing.
I ask fans what are the lines that they took from our shows that they've used in their life, because at Kayfabe we have them too, like Good for Price for the Iron Sheik, when we took him for breakfast after the Howard Stern show, and he ran out of the 4-star diner and beat them on the check. And we get in the car and no one's saying a word. Like I'm trying to pay. Like I'm trying to do the right. I'm standing at the counter, reaching into my pocket. Sheik is hugging the owner of the diner. And while he has him, he pushes me through the doors out into Eric's car. We get in, we drive away. And Sheik turns to Eric and says, "Breakfast good for price, Bubba." And so Good for Price became one. Kicking out was definitely one that, after the horror of the shoot that never was, that we had to shut down early because Buff was tired.
Long day of gigoloing, man.
Oh, I read it. Yeah.
Yeah, kicking out. Give me a minute to kick out, brother. I can kick out. Yeah, that was a good one too.
But it's like a high-pitched voice in that Southern Alabama. Just give me a chance to kick out real quick,
And also, anytime wrestlers use wrestler jargon for real life is great. Like that one, when the Iron Sheik talked about going up to Wendy Richter's room, wanting to get blown, and he said it in terms of, what did he say? He goes, Wendy Richter, she always smoked my marijuana, drink my beer. So I go up to her room and knock at the door, see if she do the job for me. And tremendous. Do the job. You guys, use that with your wives later. See if you want me to get a job for me.
Oh my God. I mean, I got so many things I could ask you, but I don't want to take up too much time. I guess what I really want to ask you, I was thinking about asking you about your time that you spent with Vader, but screw it. I just want to ask this. I love the timelines. I love the shoots. I love every video you've done with Vince Russo. I think it's just absolute money. When you listen to Bischoff talk and you listen to Russo talk, where do you, I guess the way I want to word this is, where do you really stand on whose side you're more on with the way they think and are? Because me, when I listen to Russo, I try to understand him and stuff like that. The way he talks about it's a television show. And Bischoff, I like Bischoff, but I think like he never really. I listened to the show with Conrad and stuff, and it's a lot of I don't remember for pretty much everything and whatever. Who do you think was really like, I guess, more to blame around that WCW time, and who's really more of the I don't know. I guess you get what I'm trying to ask you.
I do, but you got to understand, it all comes down to perspective too, because Russo came up writing for Vince's magazine. Okay,
right.
So he came up being involved in having to create content around the product. Something that Russo told me that I was surprised about. No one that ever wrote for the WWF magazine before was ever on the road with the wrestlers. They sat in the office and they wrote everything, like totally disconnected from the storylines. Russo said, can I come out and hear about the storylines so that when I write about them, I can go into more detail and talk about like maybe what's coming up. So he put himself in the creative, in the writing end of it. I don't think he ever really cared about the business end of contracts and stuff like that. Now, Eric is coming from, listen, when Ted Turner hands you the ball and says, all right, you got Monday night, go ahead. You know, you're very much coming from the business end of it. I know he had a lot to do with creative also, but he had people coming to him with creative. He saw himself as responsible for TNT's money. So it's a very different type of responsibility. You can't fuck around really. Whereas, you know, when it's storyline stuff, yeah, Vince Russo had to write, 7 hours of TV a week. Something doesn't work, you abandon the storyline, you jump onto something else. You have that freedom as a writer. And also, it helps to be writing words for some of the most talented talkers at the time. You got Austin out there, Rock, So it's two different perspectives, and it was two different jobs, I guess. I don't really put them in the same category. Their responsibilities were so different. I mean, to be responsible for 7 hours of TV product is huge responsibility, but Eric was responsible for the damn company.
Do you think a lot of it too is that they truly just didn't like each other as well? So that's why it just wasn't, I don't know. I think that it was kind of done by the time Eric came back. I mean, who was really watching WCW? It seemed like, so I don't think it really mattered, but that on the internet, it's always a blame game. And I mean, I don't ever understand why Ferrara doesn't ever get shit. It's always Russo. Nobody mentions Ferrara.
Because they see him as like Igor. He was like, he's the salacious crumb next to Jabba. They kind of always saw Russo as the whether it was true or not. I mean, Ed might have been as had as much input as Vince, but Vince was the vocal, the kind of the target. So I think that it's just Ed becomes an attachment onto the Russo thing, like an appendage. Like Batista's big appendage was.
There it is.
How big is Batista's? Yeah.
Ferraro was. That's where I thought you were going when you were started with the question. Yes. Like, I watched all your timelines, and I love anything. But how is it?
Yeah.
That was a little Pacino right there.
Wow.
And if there's one more tiny thing I can ask.
Here it is.
It was set up so well.
Anything you did with Kevin Nash was money. I mean, it was two dudes just shooting the shit, and I loved it. And I did, or I still have it. I pay for the vault deal, and I just go and I binge them all the time. And you did hardcore. I believe it was a U shoot, and he talked about. And you hear a lot of these guys tell you how they went up to the clique and they said, if you fuck with me, you guys, you better, everybody's got that story. And when I listen, some people, like I try to visualize it. Where do you stand on the hardcore's story of that? Do you think he really stood up to Kevin? Because, I mean, Kevin's just such a big son of a bitch. I think, like, who really is going to stand up to him?
I don't know. People ask me about degrees of truth with the wrestlers. I tell them the worst thing I could ever do is challenge anybody's. You really want me to give someone a lie detector, or would you rather just hear this ridiculously amazing story that's coming out of this person's mouth? I don't care whether they're lying to me or not. It's my job to produce entertaining programming. So did Holly, if anyone who doesn't know, Hardcore Holly says he kind of bellied up to Nash in the locker room and told them they better cut it out or something serious was going to go down. And when I played it for both Scott and Kevin, I think Kevin just said he never remembered that. And I think Scott said, if he ever said that to Kev, you would have never seen him again. So they definitely don't have a recollection of it. But you know what? The time I always spent with Bob, all right, this is a good example. You asked me before about difficult people. I always heard about Bob Holly.
Right.
I always found him to be the nicest guy. I had a great time with him. And he always seemed to be an honest guy. I don't know why he wouldn't be in that case. I've never known him to lie. So I don't know. I don't know who's telling truth. but it's a fun story to hear Bob tell, and it's a funny story to hear Scott say never happened, because what would have happened to Bob if it happened? So you just keep that going. You don't want anybody to admit they're lying. You keep playing the music and everybody dances. That's what it's all about.
Damn right, yeah.
Speaking of Kevin Nash, I would like to listen to him talk for like 2 hours just about like the Kennedy assassination or something.
Yes.
That would be entertaining to me. So, Christian, you can hang out here with us as we wrap up. Get a couple of these questions. Did you laugh out loud during the Greg Gagne shoot with Cornette when he claimed he and Byrne were going to restart in '91 and had Hulk Hogan signed?
I love the production value here too. You got the little "you shoot" gimmick that comes up at the bottom. This is great.
We got the "you shoot" package, actually.
Back to the Batista question. Go bring that up one more time.
All right.
Did I laugh when during the Grand? Oh, yeah. People have a good time with a lot of what Greg Gagne has said on some of our programming. I might have chuckled. I don't know. I laughed. Greg's a nice guy. Greg's a nice guy.
Here you go. Any rumor to the chapter of Cabana's "You Shoot" was "Fuck you, Phil. I hate you. Die, die, die."
I don't know. The Cabana "You Shoot" would have been a lot of fun, actually. But he wouldn't do it. And you know what? He came up and shook my hand at an event. So I gotta hand it to Cabana. He's a man. He's a man. Did you hear that? You remember when Punk talked publicly for the first time and it was on Cabana's?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
The thing that irked me the most about it, it sounded like two like high school bullies in the locker room talking about like how everybody sucks. The one thing that I was so confused by, they talked about when people come up and call Punk Phil. And they were shooting on that so hard. Like belittling the fans that called him by his fucking birth name instead of the fake fucking character. And I don't remember if it was Phil or Scott, but one of them said, yeah, that's like going up to De Niro on the street and calling him Bobby. First of all, the comparison between CM Punk and Robert De Niro is unbelievable. But
same record at MMA. No.
It's exactly the opposite of that. It's like someone walking up. What you want to happen, Punk, is it's like someone walking up to him on the street and calling him Travis Bickle. They should call him Bob, and they should call you Phil. Just the mentality of the wrestling thing was so funny, and they so flippantly said it. They're like, yeah, it's like walking up to De Niro on the street and calling him Bobby, calling you Phil. Yeah, call him Bobby, call him Phil. You want to call him Punk? Call me Punk. I don't know. Next question.
So Depeche Girl 02 asks your memories of Timeline 92 with Bret Hart, the initial canceled flight, and then Bret not knowing he was filming an interview until his assistant told him on the drive there.
It's this so often happens, but we had Bret booked, and this was such an important show for us. We gave him 92 to do for Timeline. I know everyone, do Montreal. Well, I'm going to hear about this anymore in Montreal already. Yeah. So we wanted to do 92. That's what gave birth to the Bret Hart that we know and love as champion, right? So we wanted to know about that ascension, right? Those details. So we paid a heavenly price and got Bret, and so we got a big breakout room at the hotel we were using. We had it catered, all the stuff there. And so Bret's assistant, Raffaella, is getting a text from Bret. His flight's fucked because of the fog. It was fog. And so now we're scrambling because we're like, the food's coming and I'm hungry. But more to the point is, can we just get the show in the can somehow? All right, well, can you fly into Philly? We'll drive to Philly. We'll pick you up in Philly, and then we'll drive you up there. So at a certain point, it's crap. It's not going to happen. We have a lovely dinner. The crew and the lovely Raffaella, we all sit down. We have a very nice spread. And then we have to wrap everything up and pay everybody and the hotel and go with no shoot. Kind of like the Buff Bagwell shoot or the Jake Roberts shoot. So no one ever wants that. But Brett says through his assistant that he'll get the show. We'll get it. And so we're like, all right. So I send his agent the script. I said, we're going to talk pretty in detail about it. So I give him the whole pitch, what it is, and here's the script. Just make sure Brett gets it. Okay. So we a couple of months later, Brett comes in. We sit down. I said, let's eat first, Brett. Long table, all the food set up. And I start to talk to Brett about the show, and it becomes very apparent that no one has told Brett anything about the show. Now, this is usually an Eric Sims special, and he'll tell you very proudly, and I still don't understand it to this day. He'll tell you very proudly, Sean, I like to tell the talent as little as possible about what they're going to do. I said, why? So, but I'm going through a legitimate agent now. It's not Eric. It's like an agent. So I figure that this is all going to be handled like, when I do movies and stuff, how everything's done, like all the information. They make sure that I'm coming to the set ready to perform. So Brett came to the set ready to eat. And I realized, I go, oh, Jesus, did they not give you the script? And he's like, no. He's like, they didn't even really tell me. I said, oh, shit, Brett. I said, well, here's the thing. So I give him the pitch about what timeline is. And he goes, well, this sounds like something right up my alley. So I was like, all right, whew. At least, because he could have very easily had the Brutus Beefcake reaction, which I enjoyed recounting with him on my podcast when he walked in the room at 8 o'clock in the morning. This is an Eric Sims special. We can only get the shot at 8 o'clock in the morning. All right, fine. So I guess Brutus was up till 4 in the morning at the bar. He walks in the room. The lights are set up. The cameras are set up. And he goes, whoa. And he's gone. Gone. Leaves. Walks out. I don't know where he is. Eric is sitting there telling me he's got to meet his wife at the mall across the street. He really can't handle it right now. And Brutus is loose in Elizabeth, New Jersey. Brutus on the loose. Then he's in the hallway screaming at his wife on the phone. It was a nightmare. So, but Brett says it's up his alley. He sits down. He has recall of all the events and delivers a great show. A Brett story that I should tell. I have long publicly told my suspicions that Montreal was a work. All right. Yeah. Very few people are in my wheelhouse any longer about this, but I think I have compelling evidence. Let's just say that. I have compelling evidence that this was just too perfect. What a perfect solution. He doesn't want to lose the belt in Canada. Vince needs the fucking belt back before Raw tomorrow, before Nitro tomorrow night. There's no next week. There's no next month. He needs it back. Brett doesn't want to lose it. What if it's a promoter screw job?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Gives birth to the McMahon character, which goes on to do tremendous business. Brett goes to get the big payday in WCW without any constraints and WWF trying to hold him to anything. He goes. It's perfect. It works out for everybody. But the most compelling thing is from a production aspect. When the bell rings and the title has changed hands, a heavyweight title, can you think of another time in history that the camera cut to the loser's face? Why? Why did the truck call that shot? They didn't call the champion. And can you think of another time you didn't get a shot at the champion? No, I know Sean was feigning confusion or whatever. But when you're in the truck, you cut to an extreme close-up of Brett's angry, confused face. after the bell, right after the bell, first shot after the bell, in the sharpshooter, is Brett's face. Why? Why were we shown that? Why did we need to see that reaction to set up what was going to come, the whole charade outside breaking the monitors? Why did we need to see that face? If nobody knew, but the small handful of people, Earl Hebner, Vince, Bruce Pritchard apparently, and Sean, why did a director call that shot in the truck? Why was the camera on? Why did the cameraman at ringside have an extreme close-up of the loser's face? I don't know. So anyway, so I've said that a lot. People tell me I'm wrong. I think everyone got worked except the three people involved, Vince, Brett, and Sean. I think even Pat, everybody I think got worked. It would be great for me to think, in this day and age, can I just hold on to something in wrestling fooled everybody and still has? But I said it so often behind Brett's back. With everybody there, the guys on the set, I felt I had to save a little face and tell Brett to his face what I thought. So during a break, somebody brings up Montreal, or it comes up, whatever, and I say, hey, Brett, I just hear everything before you respond, and then respond. And I told him that. I told him what I said. I said, here's why I think the argument could be made for anyone who wasn't there, like me, that this was a work. And I told him that. I told him the camera angle thing. And he just sat there, and he didn't call me an idiot or an asshole, or he didn't King Kong Bundy me. He said, I can see why you'd think that. And that was it.
Interesting.
Possibly.
Sean, did you ever see him raise his voice higher than basically this kind of talking that he does, like this? Because he's very monotone, and he's my favorite. It's my all-time favorite guy. But like, I've never seen him really get upset in anything. Even when he was in the locker room in the Paul Jay documentary. Sean, were you in on this, Sean?
Right.
I punched him right in the face,
No, I mean, I've been around him limited time. I think that maybe we could ask the person who asked that question, Depeche Mode girl, too, or whatever. She might know better, so maybe write in, Depeche girl, if you know Brett. Does he ever raise his voice? The amount of time I spent with him, I wouldn't be able to. About the only time he would have had the opportunity to do that was when I told him that I thought Montreal was work, but he didn't. He was very polite and respectful, which worked out for all of us.
She happens to be the assistant that you mentioned. So,
if anybody Brett's going to yell at, it's going to be his assistant, so she would know.
Yeah, exactly. No, she was awesome. She kind of held everything together, because when that first night was falling apart, like, she was the go-between. Like, she was the one on the phone with Brett and us, and we were wildly trying to make last-minute arrangements. It was already like 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and he, I don't know where he was coming up from. I want to say Texas. I think Dallas was involved in some way. If it was a stopover or whatever, but she, and then just trying to negotiate other flights, and then he's at the counter at the airline, back and forth. Those are those tenuous situations that happen in this business. And, travel, it's no secret to anybody who listens to stories about the wrestling business. Travel is always a big caveat. And, it's so many times it's out of your hands, but but we got the interview, and it was by all accounts, people loved that edition of
definitely
of Timeline. And it was just so the right year to do with Brett. The success of that show, the success of all of our shows is right guest for right show. I mean, that was it. That's the magic formula. We didn't always follow it. I mean, I think sometimes we thought we might be following it, and it turned out not to be the case, through no fault of our own. We try to do as much research as we can beforehand to make sure that the person we're getting is the perfect fit. Even for like a U-shoot, you want the people who are really going to let loose.
Yeah. Well, apparently he did raise his voice the next day with the staff. So there's your answer, Christian.
Wait, what did they say? They took everything out of his room?
Well, he's getting breakfast.
Listen, I got the hell out of Dodge. We are like the Old West. We load up our guns, we come in, we shoot, we pack up, and we're gone. The money changes hands, and we're out the fucking door. What happens after that is anybody's business.
So I wanted to address Dawn of the Dead in the chat. We did talk about Vampiro already, so if you'll go back and find that, Sean did discuss working with him. Then the final question, probably the hardest hitting question. Our good friend Pizzow was in the chat.
How big is Batista's dick?
No, we did that one earlier.
What kind of cereal did Raven have?
That's a good question. I only saw it through the bag. And when I talked to him about it years later, when I liked him more, and we were doing, he's like, I had 10 bags of cereal.
I remember you said.
You know what? When I tell this story to people, people's reactions to it run the gamut from laughter to Scotty going, why would I buy 10 boxes of cereal? I said, Scotty, you had 10 boxes of fucking cereal. To Sandman, who goes to me, I tell him, I go, Scotty, you had 10 boxes of cereal. He goes, who doesn't love fucking cereal? Cereal's fucking great.
I listened to that podcast of Raven denying it. Yeah, I'm a narcissist, but I'm trying not to.
That's Scotty. Who doesn't love cereal? Cereal's fucking great.
So we mentioned your books a little bit up at the top of the show, but you have a website, Sean Oliver Books, and you have your books, kayfabe-based books, but also some novels you've written, horror-based. You want to talk a little bit about those real quick?
Yes, Daniel and crew will enjoy them. Sophie's Journal was my first. The Consultant was the second. Transfer is the third. I'm on the third draft of my fourth novel. I had to put it down. I wrote a series which got optioned by a producer a few months ago, fortunately. So hopefully that will come to life on one of the streamings. It's based on a true story. It's an espionage / spy type true story. Cuban spy and double agent who comes to the United States in the 70s and does some, or 60s, I should say, and does some very bad things for the CIA. So I did that. So I had to put the screenplay, the novel down, and so pick that back up. It should be out later this year. It's called My Bloody Heaven. And yes, for the wrestling fans, for the people who care about that stuff we've been talking about, Kayfabe, stories you're not supposed to hear from pro wrestling production company owner, and then Father's Blood, about the fathers of wrestlers, and then the business of Kayfabe, turning wrestler stories into $1 million.
Awesome.
That's what I've been busy with.
Yeah, awesome. Everybody make sure you check that out. Again, SeanOliverBooks.com. That's linked down in the description of this video as well. So you can click that link there. Little programming note for our channel. We'll be off next Saturday, but the Saturday following we'll be back with another episode of Art Bell Classics, where we're diving into
you listen to Art. You were Art Bell fans, and we didn't talk about Art Bell for the last 2 hours.
I feel like we're going to have you back on for horror and Art Bell and everything.
You want to go out later? You want to get a beer?
We'll set something up.
Might have to catch a flight.
I always felt, and then you can get off the air because it's been 2.5 hours. And listen, what would anybody been doing anyway? You're off next Saturday. What is anyone going to do?
Exactly.
Your weekend's ruined because you're off. I always felt like Art Bell, there was a hint, there was a glint in his eye and a hint of laughter with all of the silliness that was on that show. He just enjoyed being the ringmaster of ridiculousness. I think people took him a lot more seriously than I think he really was about this stuff. I think he was just having a blast listening to people talk about the shadow people and just all that shit.
I was going to say, we talk about having a blast. We just did basically Mills 4 Hole. Episodes of Mills Hole. So
right.
Yeah.
But does anyone know the circumstances of the overdose death? Was it just a pill addiction? Was it an accidental ¿Cómo se llama? Not misdiagnosis. It's 11:16 at night. I've been talking for 2 hours and 15 minutes. And he taking the wrong amount of pills. Sean, how do you remember what happened with Stan Hansen? You do your research. Art Bell took too many pills. I don't know why he took so many pills.
Yeah, from what I read, it was an accidental overdose.
Yeah. So. Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah. So, but the 13th.
He had young kids, didn't he? He wasn't a young man, but he had young kids.
Yeah. He had remarried late in life.
He got some young action, to be completely politically incorrect and go back 25 years
from the Philippines.
Asian wife as young action.
Yeah.
Did I just steer the plane into the water?
We don't care.
We just crashed into the mountain, didn't we?
We're good.
Stevie Ray Vaughan wasn't on this flight, was he?
No. just give us a chance to kick out on it.
So Art Bell Classics will be back on the 13th with Art's interview with George Lutz, the owner of the Amityville Horror House.
We should have talked about that. A huge scam. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
It gets a movie made. It lives in American lore as one of the legitimate hauntings, and it's all bullshit. Unbelievable.
Yeah. It's still getting movies.
Yeah.
Getting one this year.
And they got rid of the windows. The one fucking thing they did to the house out on Long Island, they got rid of the windows. I'll tell you, though, if that was a good move. We're all around the same age. From my childhood, seeing those windows made me shit my pants because it was just a direct callback to that film.
Yep.
Yeah.
The windows were there before the film and after it. But what do you call those kind of windows? There should be a name. Does anyone work at Lowe's here?
I think they always called them fan windows or something.
Okay, the fan window, that's good enough for me. Fan windows equal death and destruction.
Can you come back every week, Sean? We can come up.
Yeah, Corey's been trying to sign off for 14 minutes.
Dan, what's coming up on Flesh Wound Features?
Wait, they're fucking moon windows. That's what they're called.
Oh, there you go.
We can put it to
bed. We've got a Giallo tournament coming up. Italian Giallo thrillers. We've got a Henry Lee Lucas retrospective specifically on the films.
Do you think he committed all those murders? It's bullshit, right?
Total bullshit.
He confessed to far more murders than he did because he was falling in love with the celebrity and intent and attention that other police jurisdictions were giving him. Feeding him, getting him out of jail to talk about the things he did to children.
Yeah.
So he realized, well, if I just keep making this up with my one tooth flapping in the breeze,
there's video.
Cheeseburgers.
There's video of him claiming he drove to Japan to kill someone, and they didn't see.
He was always the sharpest tool in the shed.
Yes. Master manipulator.
Yes. I'm all of a sudden Gilbert Gottfried when Howard's trying to get off the air. Go ahead, Daniel. What's coming up next? A discussion of the film Pieces and a comparison of it to Gone with the Wind.
With the deep cuts.
Pieces is better.
Was that all you had, Dan?
That
is.
Christian, how about on your channel?
I think the next thing I'm going to do is finally watch this movie, The Hitcher, which has evaded me for a long time. So that's German Blu-ray.
Now, wasn't he just an impersonator?
No, please keep going.
Is that the German
Wasn't
Blu-ray?
he just a bad Christopher Walken takeoff, really?
I'm down with the bad Christopher Walken, though. You know what I mean? I liked him in that movie, Split Second, and some other stuff. But I never saw The Hitcher because it never got. I don't even know if I could stream it. So when I found this, it's a region-free German Blu-ray. I was like, yeah, let's get that. So I'm gonna watch that. You're in for a treat, Christian. It's a great one.
There's also an awesome interview with Darren Miller from CKY over on Christian's channel right now.
Yeah, that was. I have a second one, and he's a massive horror fan. I was blown away by his Kiss. He had like a Turkish Elder record, which I didn't even know existed. So his Kiss records are insane too. So
that's 2 out of the 3. I'm gonna guess he's not married. Horror films, Kiss, and if he's a wrestling fan,
Sean,
he's not getting any
married
action.
to horror
He's
royalty.
married to Felissa Rose.
from Sleepaway Camp.
Sleepaway Camp?
Yeah. And that was the reason
hot.
She's gorgeous. That was the reason I interviewed him. I mean, fuck CKY. No, I'm just kidding. I love CKY, but he's not in the band no more. He's got his new band and stuff. But I interviewed him because I wanted him to share his story of how he met Felissa and married her. And
he does too.
It was a great story. He flew out to the set of Return to Sleepaway Camp. He got his manager to talk to somebody. They went out there. He basically said, I was trying to bang her that weekend, but she wouldn't. And so we ended up getting married not long after that.
There's a very fine line between this and the Henry Lee Lucas story. You realize that?
Yeah.
A little bit, a couple extra dollars.
To meet an actress, you better either be very good looking or an actor yourself, because, you might end up in jail. Please don't try this at home. Anybody out there who knows somebody who knows Linnea Quigley, don't fly out to the set. It's going to end badly for you and her.
All right. Well, it's been a great night. It's been awesome to have you, Sean.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
We got to have you on again sometime. Just talk everything about wrestling,
except wrestling.
That would be awesome.
I was going to say, can you let me know in advance that there's Art Bell on the menu and Sleepaway Camp? Paul D'Angelo, by the way, who was in Sleepaway Camp, is a local from he was like, I guess, the male lead. He was like a counselor or something. He was like 49 when he made the film. I think he was supposed to be 15 in it, but it was his one claim to fame. He still runs around my town here in Bayonne trying to get he had like an agency he started at one time. I'd like to ask him questions about Paul D'Angelo on the set next time, perhaps, when I come back.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Guys, thanks. Oh, go ahead, Jonathan.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to sign us off. I want to thank everyone that was watching tonight, everyone that submitted questions, and thank you guys for being here as well. So until we're back with you next time,